takes you inside bookshops, coffee shops, print shops, and libraries. We're looking on book clubs, bookshelves, and any place else where people are writing, making, selling, or reading books. At Face the Book, we dive boldly into the swirl of new media in this age of the Kindle, mega bookstores, microblogging, cloud computing, and Amazon. Best of all, Face the Book helps you discover exciting new independently published books and maybe publish your own. Hi, I'm Mike Bulio, the moderator for this episode of Face the Book. Thanks for joining us. Today I'm joined by Paul Boynton and Christine Griffin here in the studio. Paul, you're a self-published author of Begin with a Yes, and Christine is the soon-to-be self-published author of Divorced, So What, Now What? Charting a New Course for Life. So both of you are working on books in the self-help genre, and that's our focus for today, talking about getting into the self-help genre, self-publishing, and how it affects the self-help genre, and where it's going in the future. So now, how long has your book been out, Paul?
It's been out for a little over a year.
Okay, and you published it yourself. It was sort of an outgrowth of your work.
Yes, I manage a nonprofit in New Hampshire that serves people with disabilities. And as part of my job there, I was frequently making presentations and speeches. And I realized one day that even though they were all different, they were all the same, and that I was always talking about being optimistic and how important having an optimistic outlook was. And that's sort of when the idea for the book began to take shape. And so I had a lot of material to start with because
right.
I had many, many years of presentations to draw from.
And Christine, you're starting from a different place. You worked as a real estate assessor?
Real estate paralegal and an assessor, so it's actually two different jobs.
Oh, okay.
So.
And then you had a major life-changing event.
I did.
Which was a divorce.
A divorce. And 50% rate now, at least.
And that catalyzed you to make changes in your own life.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So for me, what ended up happening was I found myself divorced. I'm also a single mother, so I have a son. And I found myself in uncharted water where I was learning how to live in a whole new way and really in a place I never expected to be in life. And I really found myself landing on my own 2 feet, and I was in a great place in my life. And I then became a certified performance coach and a certified relationship coach. And from that, I really realized that I had a message and I had something to assist other people who are going through what I went through and landing in a great place.
Excellent. And your book is in progress?
It's in progress. I do have my first draft done. I'm in the editing stage now.
That's great. Mm-hmm. So you realized through your coaching experience that you wanted to get it down on paper, give it as a resource to your clients, exactly. But also to help you get the word out to other people.
Exactly. I have a great message, and so I facilitate support groups for divorced people, and the book really is going to serve them in a way that they have a tangible tool. So we often meet, but at the same time, when they go home and we're not meeting, for a while, they have some tools they can go back to.
Right, okay. And Paul, your strategy is a little bit different because your main focus is speaking engagements is a way that a lot of your that you talk to a lot of people and communicate
right.
with them. So it's more of a group event, and your book is promoted that way.
Right. It's kind of interesting because that's how Christine and I first met. Was I find that a lot of coaches are drawn to my book because people like Christine say, "Oh, I found Paul's book. You might want to look at it." And she's been a wonderful promoter.
I have.
Me.
That's great.
When I find a good thing, I want to share it.
So it's that sort of networking. And so I'm very engaged in I like to think of myself kind of like a matchmaker. I love that role of connecting people to people. I love the things that can come out of those connections, but it's not my job in the same way that it's Christine's job to coach people and motivate people.
Absolutely, and ironically, it was partly Paul as well that inspired me to write the book, because as I was helping people, I knew that, I was helping people, but at the same time, I didn't think that publishing a book was within my realm until Paul and I met, and he said, "Oh yeah, I published this book, this is how I did it." And suddenly it became possible that, hey, I could do that. If Paul could do it, I could do it.
If Paul could do it, anyone can do it, right?
Well, that's not what I meant. But I just didn't realize it was, that easy now that self-publishing is really
Right.
an avenue for people
Right.
to
It's
pursue.
become a way for, especially for self-help, I think, it's become an easier way to get the word out there. Because in a sense, I mean, do you find that, your speaking engagements, that book becomes almost a business card?
It does, and it
In some
will. So
ways.
for me, I'm certainly in the process of getting it to be that, and that's my foundation. For me, I have an acronym within my book that really is the foundation of my coaching, LIFE, standing for Let It Be, Invest in Yourself and Others, Fulfill Your Dreams, and Enjoy. And so it's really building off that acronym and giving that tool to others, and I use that when I'm speaking and facilitation, but now it'll be in the book in a way that I can.
Right. Right, give them a tangible take home. And so you said that seeing that Paul had self-published made you say, I can do this.
Absolutely.
And now you've got your draft written, and what was the most daunting thing for you? Did you find that just getting started, or do you find that writing has kind of worked because it's an outgrowth of your coaching?
Well, because I wear so many hats in my life, I think that's personally for me my biggest challenge. So I'm still a real estate paralegal, I'm still an assessor, I coach on the side, I do support groups, and I'm a single mom. And then I'm writing a book. So trying to fit that in. The biggest thing that worked for me as I was writing is I made a decision and choice at one point to say, you know what, I'm going to work on my book every single day, no matter how little it was, so that way I just kept the momentum going. And it's almost like Paul's book where, it's just keeping in action.
And that's sort of your book, that's one of your tenets is, I think the tagline was where the law of attraction meets the law of action.
Right. And the law of attraction, and lots of people, there was a huge book called The Secret, which really encouraged people to sort of manifest what they wanted by acting as if they already had it. And I think that the book, even though it's really interesting and I admire a lot that's in the book, kind of falls short if you don't realize that you also have to show up and do something. You can't just sit there and manifest, or at least in my opinion you can't. And so that's where the law of action, which is really just take one small step. And the steps can be so small, in my opinion, that you can do them in 5 minutes. Like I say, if you can't do it today, it's too big of a step.
So break it up a little bit more.
Definitely break it up. And then it doesn't matter how much you have to do, how many jobs you have. I mean, there's you can take one small step today, and eventually those steps start to add up, and all of a sudden you're writing a book.
Exactly.
So that's how you got over your own personal hurdle of saying, how am I
Absolutely.
going to start this book?
Right. So many people talk, there are so many people that you talk to that would love to write a book, but you have to begin.
Right, exactly.
The name of my book is Begin with Yes, as you mentioned, but I thought yes was the most powerful word, but someone said to me, for me, it's the word begin that was the most powerful.
Right.
It's do something.
And how often do we get overwhelmed looking at the big picture?
Absolutely.
Exactly, because you talk to someone about, I want to write a book. They say, well, how are you going to get it published?
Right,
Who's
exactly.
who's
Yeah,
going to be
you
your
look at
editor?
all the problems.
Right, exactly, right. They get a laundry list of
Right.
steps that are way down the road
Right.
that often, like in your case, happen organically.
Right.
We talked earlier, you said your editor was someone you have met by
Yeah, it was
chance.
completely by chance. And I can remember the first time I showed a manuscript to someone. In fact, they were just visiting from the West Coast a couple of weeks ago. It was 12 pages long. And I thought, man, this book is almost done. And it was like 12 pages long. And in his reading, he gave me some feedback, and then I took the next step. And it just sort of takes on a life of its own if you don't try to, write the whole book this weekend.
Right.
And there's people out there advertising that you can, but
Right.
it depends on the book.
I suppose.
It's a busy weekend.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
for sure.
Without sleep or eating or anything else.
And one of the focuses of Face the Book is always, self-publishing, and how did you actually do it? In your case, you used CreateSpace, which is the Amazon product.
Right. And I actually didn't do a lot of research to find out what was the best. I sort of fell into CreateSpace, and it was so easy for me to move through their process. And I had a little bit of assistance, but mostly it was very user-friendly, and there was no cost to it.
Right.
And so once you're ready, once you have a product, you can have that available through Amazon,
Right.
which is a huge you know.
And that's one of the biggest changes of the past 5 or 10 years is that, it used to be that if you self-published a book, you were, getting something, in one of those GBC plastic
Right.
homes and,
Yeah.
with a cardboard cover, handing it out, saying, "Here's my book."
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And you had to pay for someone to print.
Right.
You know.
However many copies you thought you would
Right.
need.
Right.
And now, in the case of Amazon, they do some print on demand, so that when you sell a paper copy, it's
Yeah, you know what? You could order a copy of my book, and do overnight shipping, and you'd have it tomorrow.
Yeah.
So there's just no time lag whatsoever. And for some reason, it's on Barnes & Nobles now, too, and I'm not sure how it got there or how they actually sell it, but it's available through Barnes & Nobles, and now any bookstore in the country or in the world, literally, can buy it. And so.
And I'm still learning. I'm looking at all the different options, and in some ways I'm overwhelmed because there's publishers out there that you could go to
Right.
and will self-publish for you,
Right.
so to speak. They'll give you one flat fee. I think there's one under Hay House that does it, Balboa Press, and I looked into that, and then I looked at Create Space, and I just become overwhelmed with the information, and then think to myself, I'm just doing it
The
that
thing
way.
to keep in mind, too, with CreateSpace is that you don't give up the right to your book at all. So
Right.
if you decide you want to do it someplace else, you can do that as well.
Yeah.
So they don't have an exclusive arrangement with you.
Right.
So that appealed to me, and the no money up front appealed to me a lot.
Yeah, sure.
Absolutely.
That was a selling point.
But Christine, you're the perfect example of, sort of, you've taken that leap. You said, I'm going to write a book. You've got your draft, and you're saying, okay, I
Now
feel like I've
what?
done the hard part, but now there's, now I'm ready to break it up into small pieces again. And
Yeah, and I'll admit, for the time where I got to the point where my draft was done, I'm thinking, oh, great, what a relief, and yet at the same time, still knowing that there's so much to do. So I've gotten stuck a little bit, researching these various options as to what to do, and then realizing that I just need to keep going forward. So, finding an editor, I've been researching and looking out for editors possibly,
Yeah.
and thinking, do I just hand this over to someone and say, okay,
Right. And, a good editor is hard to find, and it's so important to find someone that you can have some back and forth with, who's going to tell you what you need to know and help you make your book better.
Right.
Um,
And
you
for
know.
me, I don't know about you, Paul, I'd be curious because, in some ways, I wonder, are they going to morph my message? And, I have a message. I know ultimately it's up to me.
Right. There's your message and your voice, both of which make your book yours.
Exactly.
And you want to find an editor who can tweak it as opposed to just replace it.
Exactly.
And, again, you happen to.
Yeah, I was so fortunate because the woman who I ended up hiring to be my editor loved the manuscript.
Yeah.
And so we started from a place of her understanding my voice, as you pointed out, and so her job was not really to try to change that. And so we worked very collaboratively, though, went back and
Yeah.
forth a lot.
And it just goes to show the power of networking. I mean, absolutely some visualization and some action. But I think you were saying that you had some copies already printed of the manuscript that you were handing out to some people, and through that networking and through saying, here's my work,
Right.
it just kind of fell into place.
Yeah.
And it's sort
That's
of
very true. I do love networking, and I just think it's such a powerful way to connect with people.
right. And especially for self-published books, if you take James Patterson, probably the best-selling mystery writer in the country, he's got a team of 200 people, selling his book for him. So he's become almost a brand name.
Right.
Whereas if you self-publish,
Don't have that.
you don't. And how do you replace that team of people? And that's another thing that the internet has really made possible. I know that you have a really active Facebook page.
Right. Yeah, I love the social media, and it's such a powerful way to connect with people. And I learned very early on to not use it to promote my book, but to talk about my ideas,
Right.
and let the book sort of take care of itself. And,
Good distinction.
and I think that's really important.
Yeah.
And because people are always being sold something.
Exactly.
Very true.
And it's also very hard to get people to buy something. I feel I just think it's very hard to get people
That's
to
true.
take that step. So if by sharing your ideas you create a hunger for
More.
for more,
Right.
then that's the way to do it. And so,
You know, there's a popular saying amongst experts in the field that, right, that you don't want to sell yourself. You want to that you want to sell yourself, not your product.
Product. I've heard
And
that.
that if you prove that you're an expert in something, people will come to you.
Right.
And you know, and it's basically what you're doing. You're saying, I have a message. It's valuable. Here's a condensed form of that.
Absolutely, and I've actually utilized my group. You know, I have a support group that I run, and in that, I've actually had some people very willing and wanting to read my book, and I figured this is the best audience,
Right.
because these are the people that are going to tell me, well, this doesn't make any sense to me. I have no clue what you're
Right.
saying, or this really helped me, and get
Right.
some valuable feedback from the actual audience that I'll be marketing to.
Right, right, and or even, I understand this because I've heard you say it, and it's very Christine, which is nice, but you
Right.
need to sort of broaden its reach.
Exactly. Or boil it down in a different way, or frame it in a different way. I bring a lot of my personal experience into the book, and I find that in some ways it's intimidating. I feel like I'm putting myself out there in my underwear, because, you know, there's a lot of my personal hardships and experiences that I went through that, you know, also add credibility, in my opinion, to what it is that I'm saying. I'm not just saying this because, you know, it sounds like a good idea. I'm saying it because I know, because I've been there and I've done it.
Right, and relatability is one of the biggest things. I mean, reality television is popular because people can relate,
Absolutely.
and you know, getting yourself out there, putting yourself out there, you know, feeling like you're exposing yourself,
Absolutely.
you know, is painful in a way. It's, you know, jumping into the you know, ice cold water at first thing in the morning, but
But, and what was really interesting as I was writing, and I received feedback from different people, is that as a coach, I don't know if you find this as well, that I've learned not to get caught up in my circumstances and my story. And so going back to what I considered my story was very uncomfortable for me. It was almost cathartic in writing the book, because I was putting it out there in a way that I'm thinking, this is just, you know.
a little too close to
Yeah,
home.
yeah. So, but I ended up doing it, and I think it works, because in the end I tie it to my message.
Right.
and I think it makes it much more meaningful to the people that are reading your book, because you're not just you know, someone that's talking about what someone else should do. You're talking about something that you
Right.
learned how to do for yourself. I think it's a much more powerful message.
And that's the feedback that I've received as well. So hopefully we'll see whether or not that works or not.
Yeah, but no, your passion comes out on the page, just like in your book. You know, it's what speaks to you, and it will speak to other people, because they'll be able to relate to it.
I hope so.
So, pardon me, I just lost my train of thought completely.
That happens
Yeah.
sometimes, even when I'm writing my book.
You're right.
It happens to me all the time, but in fact, I was, you know, had a thought, if I could just jump in
Please.
and share it, is the beauty of self-publishing, I think, is that there is an audience for everybody's book. And you don't have access to the audience unless you have a vehicle like Amazon. So if you want to write a book about knitting with goat cheese or something ridiculous like that, there's got to be 10 people in the world
10
that are
people.
also
Right.
interested in knitting with goat cheese. So it just expands the marketplace tremendously. And so I think that there definitely is room for people who've got a story to tell, whether it's
The
fiction
other
or
side of that coin that I've heard as well, I've gone to some of the independent publishers conferences. They say the self-publishing, the other side of that is that now there's everybody that's
Right.
publishing, and so you then become watered down in the market, because there's so many authors out there.
Right, and you know, that's where differentiation comes into play, and you know, talking about being passionate about it, and you know, your Facebook page where you're very active on it. You know, I remember 15 years ago, everyone said, "Oh, you got to have a website, and it's got to, you know, it's got to dance and sing and you know, juggle," and you know, people didn't get it, and you know, now everyone's saying you have to have a Facebook page, and you do, but it's not enough to just have it.
Right. It definitely is not enough just to have a Facebook page, at least for me.
Right.
Because why are people going to come back unless there's something new?
Right, exactly. And, because you have to get your passion across. You have to differentiate yourself from the, millions of other people that can log on to CreateSpace. You have to stand out.
Absolutely, and that's what I've been told as well, especially, I'm sure there's, and I know there's a million divorce books out there,
Right.
but what makes mine different or special, that someone's gonna wanna pick up mine versus someone else's, so does it then become, just a business card for me?
Right, and that's where an editor comes into play as well, because it takes your written word and your passion and your relatability and just makes sure that it's coming across the way that you want it to, and that differentiates you as well from a lot of self-published people. I think just writing isn't enough.
Absolutely, and one of the things that I heard at the conference as well is that having a story. And so I heard that even after I had put my own experiences into the book, is that, people really don't buy the product, as they say. So they really buy the person's story. Right. And it's like you were saying earlier, it's just selling yourself.
You become the brand.
Absolutely.
Not the book, so that's true.
It's very true.
And that was at the IPNI conference?
IPNI conference, right. They had a weekend conference where essentially it was Saturday and Friday, Saturday. Did they do it Sunday? No, it was just Friday and Saturday.
Yeah, and that's the.
It's a while ago.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but that's the independent publishers.
I can't remember what I did yesterday.
Right. That's the Independent Publishers of New England, which is a great group if you're in the area, of course.
Exactly.
A lot of resources for other people thinking about self-publishing.
I met some great people through there. That's the other thing that I found very helpful as I'm writing my book, is really creating a community of people that I can reach out to.
Right.
I reach out to Paul. I reach out to various people that I've met, and so.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons that they exist, is that there's all these resources that are, that different people know about, and how do you get them out there? And
Absolutely.
One of our goals on the show is to, to spread the word a little bit and make self-publishing a little less daunting, and just sort of talking about the future of books, etc. And I know that you were saying earlier that your paper and electronic book sales are about equal now.
Right, they really are, and I mean, certainly in my lifetime, self-publishing was kind of embarrassing.
Right.
At one point, it was called vanity press, wasn't it?
Yes, exactly.
So that meant you sort of publish your own book for your own ego or vanity. And so I think that we've seen a tremendous swing in the other direction. And we were talking about networking earlier, and through Facebook, I connected with Joan London, who, after many conversations, agreed to write a quote for the cover of my book. And then when I'm talking to her, she's asking me about CreateSpace because she's got a lot of books that have gone out of print, and she's saying, well, why wouldn't I republish them through CreateSpace?
Exactly.
It's like.
So now you're helping her.
Well, I mean, so it's changed from being that thing that you have to feel like embarrassed about to like this is
something you
what's
can
happening.
embrace, right? Yeah,
absolutely.
Right, because backlist and out of print books for a lot of people are a huge issue. I mean. Do you hope to happen to find a used copy somewhere, whether it's on Amazon or in a used bookstore like the Book Rack,
right.
Or do you download it if it's available because someone's republished it on CreateSpace or somewhere else electronically?
Yep.
It's interesting the change that's come over.
And hasn't it been the last just like 2 or 3 years that you've seen this huge change in the publishing? It's like what happened in the music industry. No one's buying CDs anymore.
Yeah, and thankfully it's a slower move, but absolutely the electronic books and the ability that gets for niche markets to congregate effectively.
And yet at the same time, I just bought a new record player. So
oh, hey,
you bought a new record player?
I did. So now I'm
out
buying all the albums that I sold in the yard sale like 20 years ago. I'm rebuying them.
Wow.
Excellent. Well, we're almost out of time, but I didn't want to go by without mentioning, just while we're speaking about marketing and getting the word out, that you have on YouTube, I think it's linked from your Facebook page as well,
right.
Sort of an ad for your book, which has really high production values, and it just gets the point across again about sort of differentiate yourself, get a video on YouTube, get your message across however you can, because that makes all the difference.
It certainly has for me.
So I want to thank Christine, soon to be the
welcome.
author of Divorce, So What, Now What? And, and Paul, the author of Begin With Yes. And this has been Face the Book. And thanks to everyone here at Acme, Lacus, Charlotte, and everyone else for allowing us to do the show, and IPNY for being a sponsor.
Great.
Thank you.